Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me? Guys able to hear me?
And Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Miss Mary. Okay, we will wait for a while, yeah? Okay, good morning, Hu Chui. I always type your name wrongly, Hu Chui. Huh? I really wish to meet all of you in person so I can yeah, I can memorize your name. Not memorize, I mean recognize, not memorize, recognize your faces, yeah? Oh, our speaker is here. Good morning, Dr. Grace. How are you?
Morning. Hi, everyone. Morning. Hi, morning, Dr. Izyanti. I'm sorry, you know what? I've been trying to on my video. The camera doesn't work again this morning.
Oh my God. The student must be
Because
very
I'm in the office, I think perhaps we have some problem with the line, maybe. I'm not sure. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. The student must be disappointed not able to see the beautiful Dr. Grace.
No.
Today's topic, okay, good morning, everyone. Today's topic is about writing a winning postgraduate research proposal. I do believe that most of the students at this level currently writing their proposal for their proposal defense, yeah? So when we talk about proposal, what is the purpose? When we talk about proposal, there's a lot of purpose. Later, Dr. Grace will explain. Okay, one of this is actually it's a research project. It's a formulated detailed plan on what you want to do in for your research. Yeah, yeah, it also actually requires a lot of skills. I myself experienced it during my PhD, whereby it took me about 8 months, 8 months to come out with a strong one. So it's hard work lah. It's not that easy. It depends on your topic as well. Oh my God, I see already the Bermuda Triangle, Dr. Grace. I'm so scared looking at the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle meaning that the line is not good. Okay, I can see Dr. Grace has a Bermuda Triangle. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today. Pang-Ing, or Dr. Grace Pang-Ing, is a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Business, Economics and Accountancy. She is currently the Deputy Director at the Center for Strategic Management and just recently completed her task there lah, maybe disambung, I don't know. She's the youngest, okay, the family, completed her degree in UKM and master degrees in University Putra Malaysia. Before joining UMS, Dr. Grace worked in Singapore as a market development executive. Oh yeah, by the way, I will explain later what is her field, yeah. And one of the largest shipping lines in Singapore for 2 years, vast experience in sales and marketing, and she is an expert in sales management, retail management, marketing management in the university. In 2015, Dr. Grace completed her PhD study in Waseda University, Japan. Then she supervises a good number of local, international PhD and master students. Currently, she has about 9 supervision under Dr. Grace, yeah, PhD and also master students, yeah. So Dr. Grace has successfully received a good number of national and university grants. I myself I myself seek for her help for any grant because she's very good in writing and also giving me advices, yeah, on writing proposal, especially in the field of retail, branding, services, and yeah, talking about her papers were published in various international national index journals, yeah, namely this Q1 and Q2 and more than that lah, banyak paper Dr. Grace ni. So in terms of not limit only to marketing, okay, Grace is actively involved in social and community development projects such as the Pgws River Development, service for households. So basically she has done a lot of CSR work also in despite of her busy schedule, and she has completed several consultation projects, yeah, funded by the local and international agency. She also gave motivational talk to school students, giving back to the community. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Grace Pang-Ing to the floor. Over to you, Dr. Grace.
Thank you, Dr. Izyanti, for the kind words. All right, hi, good morning, everyone. How are you today? I hope you guys are in good health, yeah? So, well, I was basically proposed to Dr. Izyanti. Perhaps I can talk about how to write a good research proposal for postgraduate studies. And then Dr. Izyanti kindly accepted my proposal. This is why we have the session today. But like the reason why I do so is that I believe everybody do have their own experience when they talk about doing their own PhD studies. I used to tell my student, how are we, how I supervise my student. There's no subject or courses or any workshop that we can take to really provide, to teach us how to become a very good supervisor, because supervision is very individual actually. So we are learning. I am learning to become a good supervisor, and my students are learning to become a good supervisor as well. But so this is how we learn, yeah. So the things that I'm going to share with you today are mainly very much from my own experience. It could be or my own perception, or how I have or my own experiences that I have learned throughout my years as a lecturer, as a student, mainly as a postgraduate student. Yeah, so I would love to share with you what I have found out and I have learned. I will present to you, I will share with you one of the, sorry, the slide, but the thing is that the slide is actually, I have completed this slide quite some years ago, so it could be a little bit outdated. I'm not too sure, especially on the, I think on the referencing method. Yeah, so so nevertheless, I do hope that it will help you to write your own research proposal. Can you see my screen, Dr. Izyanti? Is it? Can you see
Yes.
the PowerPoint? All
Yeah.
right. So, well, the topic today is how to write a winning postgraduate research proposal. When we say winning here, I would think that you know, how to write a research proposal that can be accepted by both your supervisors as well as the examiners. So in UMS, perhaps you need to convince first your supervisor. Secondly, you need to convince two internal examiners. Yeah. So how to win the hearts in a sense. So and the contents of the talk today I will cover would be on what is actually a research proposal and how to write a good research proposal. Then I'll conclude it. So what is a research proposal? I think Dr. Izanti did actually explain just now, and she did a very good explanation in a sense that when we talk about a research, you know, and you want to write a proposal about the research that you are doing, you are actually trying to, it is actually the proposal is actually detailing how you're going to do it. You know, how are you going to conduct the research? And this research is actually a process of finding solutions to a problem after a thorough study and analysis of the situational factors. So we can say that when we are doing a research, if this is a PhD research, we are doing academic research. So everybody have to bear in mind, a lot of students, especially those with industry experiences, I think what you encounter, the same problem like many others would be, you always think that you are trying to solve an industry issue. This is academic PhD. You are getting a PhD, you know, Doctor of Philosophy. So you must, the most important thing is the things, the research that you're going to do is going to solve a problem in the academic field. I would say you must have the contribution to the body of the knowledge. So the main issue would be, what is the body of the knowledge then? If you are doing in marketing, like what Dr. Izanti explained to you just now, I am from the field of marketing. I do consumer behavior studies. So the important thing is, how am I going to look into the issue in the industry related to the gap in the literature? So what is most important is actually to find the gap in the literature, you know, and at the same time you find a gap in the industry. Because if your main concern is to solve what is happening in the industry, then you shouldn't go for this PhD. You should go for your doctor of business at you should go to study DBA then. You know, then it is totally different. It is a practical application study. It's good enough. But here we're talking about PhD. You are basically going to study, and your study is supposed to contribute to the body of knowledge. Yeah. So when we conduct a research, especially in social sciences, I think we receive a lot of criticism from the science, you know, that our research is not being scientific. What is scientific then? Scientific means that you have to conduct the research in a proper way, systematic, organized, based on data. It has to be critical, and it has to be objective, and it is not subjective in a sense. And this justified the word scientific. So the more scientific it is, it means that the more organized, more systematic, more critical, more objective, and more based on data. This is how are we going to conduct the research. Okay. All right. So what, and I used to remember my professor used to tell me, PhD is a journey. So you are learning how to conduct a research in a proper way. Don't worry. If you're in your first year, first semester, second semester, you're still writing a proposal, or even third or fourth semester, don't worry. Different people take different time length to write their proposal. You know, a lot of students used to be very nervous, and you are very stressful because you can't finalize your framework. You in the very first semester, and this is very common. The reason being is you're still new. You need to understand what is going on. You need to find the gap in the literature and the gap in the industry, and it is not that easy. You need to take time. Okay, so this is what I want to deliver here. The message that I want to deliver here is that don't worry, calm down, read more. Very, very important in the first place that you have to do is to read. Okay, so a research proposal, hence a good one, it should contain what do you plan to accomplish. Okay, you need to know what you want to do first. You must have very clear definition of the research problem that you want to do and what is you are proposing to the research, what you want to solve actually. And the second thing is you need to know why are you doing this? Okay, why are you doing the topic? Because that topic is the one that you're interested in. Is it good enough? Something that you like, something that, because you work for this company, that's why you want to do this topic. Is it justify a PhD study for that reason? You need to think about that. Huh? How are you going to do it? The next question is how are you going to do it? So this research proposal will actually detail out how are you going to approach your research then. So I would say, how am I going to do? Okay, so what is a good, next question is, what is a good research proposal? Just now we understand that, first of all, you need to know what you want to study, you need to know how you're going to, why you do it, and also how you're going to do it. I think is one issue that is very critical when you want to do to write a very good research proposal or to conduct a very good academic research is you need to know what is whether the things that you do is worth for your time to do it or not, worth the time of your supervisors or not. So you always need to ask yourself two things. One is new and the other one is important. Make sure that you do something that is new. I'm not saying here totally new to the world type of research. We are not asking you to do a research that you can save the world. No, you don't have to. You're not Edison, you're not, we don't expect you to actually come up with, create theories, in a sense. Of course, if you can, that would be wonderful, but you do not have to create a new theory. So newness here means that it has to have newness. It doesn't mean it's to be totally new to the world.
Novelty, perhaps, that's the words? Newness and
Yeah,
novelty.
yes, it's true. Newness or novelty, it depends on, it's the choices of the words. So Amir, can you silence mute yourself, because we hear noises. Dr. Izanti, can you mute Muhammad Amir Hossein?
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you mute yourself, please? Sorry. Okay. We will leave the Q&A session or whatsoever session, discussion session in the end of the session. Yeah. All right. So novelty, what is the newness in your research? I think this is very, very important. Always keep in mind whether your research is something that's new or not, but doesn't mean that it has to be totally new. You must have novelty. You must have something additional or new things add to the existing framework or the one that people have done in a sense. And another thing is the second question is important. You must make sure that your research is significant in a sense. It has implications. It has, you can actually, if possible, it depends on the type of research that you're doing. Of course, if you can generalize your findings, that will be very good to the industry. You need to justify basically these 2 points here. It has to be new. It has to be important as well. All right. So I would say the first thing that I always advise my students to do is always ask yourself, what do I want to study? Because I think in the first place for any of the social science study would be, you're not sure what topic you want to do. You are not sure whether your topic is important enough or not, whether it is worth to do or not. And if it is an issue in that sense, how are you going to approach the problem, So I would say the things is you need to ask yourself a few questions, So maybe you can ask yourself, what do I want to study? Okay, why is this topic important? All right, how is it significant within the subject area? Is it new? Is it important? So those are the things that you have to ask yourself. And what problems will it solve? How does it build upon the and hopefully go beyond the research already conducted on the topic? To understand this, to answer this question means that you need to read. If you don't read enough, you wouldn't be able to answer yourself whether it has been conducted, what are the research that has been done, to what extent people have done, and understand about the topic that you want to do. It means that you need to read more. Okay, so what exactly should I plan to do, and how can I get it done in the time available? I think these are the main issue that you need to ask yourself before you actually proceed further. Okay. So then after you ask yourself, perhaps you don't find the answers, the next thing I would advise you is you need to talk about your ideas. So who are you going to talk it to? A lot of students are worried that, you might be getting the most brilliant idea that you might earn you a Nobel laureate's awards. Maybe in the end of the day, you don't dare to talk to people. This is wrong. Yeah, I always think that, whatever we think of an idea, definitely there are someone else who have been thinking of the same idea in other parts of the world, but maybe not exactly the same. So it would be very important for you to talk about your idea with certain people. So who are these certain people? I would say they would be your potential supervisors and experts in the field. You need to know, let's say, for example, you want to do marketing, because my field marketing, so most of the example I will give you would be related to marketing. Yeah. So let's say, for example, who are the marketing lecturers in this faculty, or anyone who is have been doing marketing related topics for a long time. You need to talk to them whether this topic is still relevant, is important. Okay. But like what I say is, you need to find someone you can trust and supportive. You don't find someone who criticize your ideas, criticize it, but there's no constructive idea given to you. And also you don't always talk to people who steal your idea. Those are very important things. So in choosing supervisor as well, this would be another topic. But let me tell you, my own experience is that I believe chemistry is very important. You need to find a supervisor that you feel comfortable to talk to. You need to be able to accept your supervisor's supervision style, because everybody have their own style of supervision. Not everybody the same, and not everybody, you cannot compare supervisors. This is what I meant. You can't say that, oh, my supervisor is like this, she's better, the other supervisor is like that, that's not good. What I would say is the supervisor with the style that most suit you would be the best one. But of course, sometimes we choose supervisor is whether we are being assigned or that person personally. If you know the supervisor, that will be the best one. But if you're being assigned, I would say you need to have the learning stage. You need to learn about your supervisor need to learn about you. So you need to have that session. And in order to go for that, to build the chemistry between you and your supervisor, I believe you need to meet your supervisor. Okay, as a student, you need to take the initiative to meet your supervisor face to face if possible. But now with the COVID, it's rather hard for you to do so. Frequent online meeting with this type of meeting, it is good enough actually. And also, I think it would be very important for you to read your supervisor, your potential supervisor's papers. You need to know what he or she is doing, whether they can help you or not, because you must understand they are not going to spoon feed you, but they're going to advise you on how to do your research. So this supervisor, if possible, you're supposed to be someone who is related to your field, but might not be 100%, because you are doing something new. So impossible your supervisor is doing exactly the same thing like what you're doing. But at least your supervisor would be able to give you advices. This is what I'm saying. So you need to know the field of your supervisors, and you need to see whether they are suitable or not, in a sense, when you're choosing your supervisor. So after you have your supervisor, you need to, I would say, you need to then discuss further with your supervisors what are the things that you want to do. Mostly your supervisor will advise you whether the things that you do is worth doing or not. Generally, they might give you some idea. they might also give you some suggestion on how to find out whether the topics that you want to do is good enough or not. So I would say then you have to go and find yourself. So how to find whether the things that you do is good enough, or let's say, for example, significant or new or not. There are actually a few ways for you to do so. Yeah? Besides reading more, you can also actually find some platform that allow you to see what is the popular topics nowadays. What are the topics that most of the people are publishing their papers in, or most of the researchers are focusing on. For example, you can go to this Thomson Reuters, and then you can check in the essential science indicator, or you can use Google Trends. Google Trends is quite interesting in the sense that actually they can tell you, if you type a words, they can tell you whether this words is currently in trend or not. But it also allows you actually to choose whether you are in which country, whether this term is trending or not. But the problem with Google Trend is that they're not only looking into the academic related topics they are just finding the trend for any general terms in Google, because when people type on the Google search, this is how they calculate how they're getting the trends actually. But generally it can give you some ideas like whether nowadays the things that you're doing is popular or not, in a sense, like in a certain country, in a certain region, or in the world. Okay, but the most important thing is actually on the second part. You need to read. Okay, read. This is what I'm trying to tell my student. You're not reading enough, you don't know the topics good enough. And read good journals. Don't read any journals only, because there are a lot of journals available, but some journals are not good journal. You need to read good one in order to be able for you to write a good one. So it's only from learning from the good journals you will be able to see how people actually properly and nicely conduct their research, write their present their research in the form of a paper. This is very important. Okay, so when you read the journal, I believe a lot of my students, even my own experiences, is that I do not know how to the journal is 14 pages at least. So 14 pages, just imagine one day I have to read 7 papers, for example. It could be very, very stressful work for you. So you must need to know how to write, how to read is very important. So I would advise you need to write, because nowadays journal are basically presented in a very nice way. It's very systematic way for them to present the journal. It always have a brief, the abstract nowadays also very, it's very structured, in the sense that even in the abstract, they will tell you this part is the main issue, and then what is the methodology, what is the findings, and what are the contribution or implications. Okay, so by reading the abstract, actually you will be able to grasp the main idea of the paper. And I will always advise my student, you can't read 100,000 papers within a short period of time. What you can do is you can see whether this paper is worth to read or not, is relevant to you to read or not. So you read the abstract first and see whether it is relevant. Once you found that, okay, it's really relevant to the things that you want to study, then you read the whole paper. Okay, and reading is a practice. The more you read, the faster you will be. In the end of the day, you will find yourself reading faster and faster. It comes naturally, actually. So there are many types of paper, of course. We have research paper, we have paper which are conceptual paper, you have meta-analysis. I would say in order to get a systematic reviews of the topic that you do, not all topics have a meta-analysis report. So if you are lucky, perhaps the one that you're doing, you do have someone who is doing the meta-analysis report, and you could get a systematic review from it. But like what I said, not all the topics you have such reports, in a sense. So it all depends on the topic. So you need to find. There are many ways to find UMS. We subscribe to a lot of these sources, Scopus, we have Jester, we have EBSCOhost, we have Emerald, ProQuest. Please use those resources. If you don't use it, when the library, when they analyze the downloaded rates, and they found that it's too low, they don't subscribe anymore, and you lost that particular source. That's my advice to you, is that please use the library resources, because we pay for it. And also the other way is you can actually use Google Scholar, the normal one, or you have any other sources available, as long as it can get you to access to the journal papers. That is good enough. Okay, so you can find to get the most, let's say for example, in Scopus or in any of these sources, basically what they have is you can see the most cited papers, so maybe those are the papers that you can have a look on, and see whether it is related to the one that you're doing or not. Okay, right. So I put here some of the way. Let's say, for example, you want to use Psych4, you want to use Web of Science, you want to use Scopus. How are you going to find those information? Okay. But maybe some of you have already know about it. You need to explore those platforms. This is my advice yourself. You need to get familiar with it. So then after that, you need to map up yourself. I would say you can use mind maps, you can use table, charts, pictures, post-it notes. Previously, when I was a student, I used just an Excel database, and then I normally just key in whatever the things that I have read, and I try to have a look on the things, and that help me actually to see the literature that I have read, and what are the things that are more important, which one is harder for us to see to find the sources, and then that will help us later on to get the gaps in the literature. So this is what I'm saying. We use whatever ways. Different people use different ways, but you need to jot down your idea. Be it type it out, be it using handwriting, you need to jot it down. You need to discuss with your potential supervisors for your ideas. Yeah. But then we can talk about a research proposal. I'm so sorry, spend quite some time to do the intro, because I think that part is very important in order to go into to write a good proposal. Okay, of course, this is the common parts for a research proposal. I believe you all know about it, whether it is a 5 chapters, 6 chapters, 7 chapters in your final thesis letter, it doesn't matter. But the things that these are the main components generally in a proposal, because we don't have the findings yet. We don't have the analysis part yet. We don't have the findings. So it will stop at what do you expect the result and implications. So here, some of the, most of our research proposal for UMS, we stop in methodology. What do methodology, then references, that's it. We don't have the expected result, implications, and a conclusion. It's not so important in a proposal. Okay, so it all depends. But generally, this is what I want you to have an idea. All right, so first of all, is the title. Many people argue how long is the title, how is the title for PhD thesis supposed to be. Generally, I just give you some guideline. This one also I find from different sources. 8 to 15 words, not too long, not too short. I would say if it is very long, because you can't have all your, if you're doing a quantitative research, my view is in quantitative research. So today the discussion will be more on quantitative rather than quali. So who are doing qualitative, I'm so sorry, perhaps we can have another session for those research proposal to do a more qualitative type of research. But generally, when you talk about a title, we can't, if let's say, for example, in your framework, you have many independent variables and also your dependent variables. You can't actually have all your independent variables to be listed in your title, because then your title will be very, very long then. So what you need to do is need to further narrow down. What I would advise you is you can maybe look into what is the main theme or the issues that you are discussing. Okay, so the title should reflect your area and your focus of the study. All right, so there are some general rules of thumb that you can follow, but not necessarily you must follow this. Okay, so maybe what you can do is these are some of the guidelines. Maybe in your topic you can have the main theme, the research topic, and then you need to have the research design plus the population plus the geographical area. It is not a must. This is just a guideline. Your topic doesn't mean that your topic must be following these few items, but it would be good if you can have this item. But sometimes our topic will get very long, that you can omit actually the population and the geographical area. Then you can just tell us what is the main research topic and the research design module. The example given to you here, for example, barriers to internet banking adoption, a qualitative study among corporate customers in Thailand. So it tells you the main theme, okay, barriers to internet banking adoption, plus the qualitative study, that will be the research design among the population and the geographical area, corporate customers in Thailand. Okay, I think this is very clear. This you can use this type of rules or guidelines to write for your journal papers as well. Okay, the dynamic nature of conflict or longitudinal study of intergroup conflict and group performance. And here you can see they don't have the geographical area, they don't have the population. It is okay, because the most important thing is actually the main research topic. If possible, it could include your research design. Okay, so you may not able to include all variables in the title. So if such, then the last two elements could be omitted lah. Okay, so you can think about that. But like what I tell my students, topic change. Actually, we amend our topics all the time. It all depends very much on the framework. So don't get too into, you know, still too into in your title, how your title should look like, because you will change your title, you will amend your title whenever you change the framework, because you have yet settled down your framework, have finalized your framework. So I believe your title would change. A very high chance your title will change. Okay, so the next one is what we call research gaps. Normally in chapter 1, I always tell my student, when you're writing chapter 1 is the most important thing, because chapter 1 is a summary of the whole thesis in a sense. It tells you why are you going to do such the research, the study. Why do you conduct the study? They explain why, explain what are you testing actually, and how are you going to do it in a certain way, because you will definitely talk about the methodology part, at least the framework part. Okay, so in order to go for your first chapter, you will need to have the background of the study. You need to tell people what is the background of the study in your paper. Okay, you need to tell people how important is the industry that you want to do, the topics that you want to do, and then after that you will bring in, but yeah, this thing is very important. In the industry, people think this is very important, but it is not well researched. Then you start to talk about the gap. Okay, so then we come to the second part in your first chapter to talk about the research gaps. Then it bring in the problem statement. So research gaps, there are basically two types of gaps here. Generally in academic research, we talk about the gaps in the industry. We talk about the gaps in the literature. So research gap is research questions or problem which has not been answered appropriately or at all in a given field of study. It is actually what makes the research significant. So this is very important. You need to know the gap. Let's say, for example, you have a topic, and then when you find information, you found that this topic was not being, it is a very important one, but the problem is a practitioner is doing it, but they don't know, they don't have a big idea of what it is, because there's no much research has been done. What they have is only experience, but not well understanding. This is already an industry gap. Or there is no such things. These are still very new in your country, for example. So this is a gap in industry. Then it will bring you into, well, okay, I can see the market significance of it, but what about in research, in literature? Is there many people has been done the research on the related field? If it was already well researched, then there's no point. You know, I still remember when I was doing my master degree, and one of the very popular topics among marketing students when we were doing my master degree would be on service quality. You know, when I talked to my supervisor last time, I want to do service quality, you know, my supervisor told me I could have thrown the proposal into the dustbin. The reason is he planned to throw the proposal into the dustbin, he said, because that is a very well established topic. But what will you expect to find the gap? The only gap that you can find, perhaps it has never been done in Malaysia, but was that good and justified a gap? in the body of the knowledge? It might not be. So in order to improve a well-established framework, it is very hard. It doesn't mean that I'm asking you to find a framework that's not established. It doesn't mean so. But what I'm trying to tell you is when the framework is too established, you could have a problem of how to add value to it. This is one thing that you need to discuss with the supervisor. I always think so. As an examiner, as a supervisor, I always think so. You know, there are some theory which is extremely established. In UMS, we are so famous, especially in FPEP, we're talking about theory of planned behavior. How many people have been using theory of planned behavior? How are you going to improve to add value in theory of planned behavior? You're going to combine it with another theory. What is the basis of combining theory? So these are the things that we really need to understand, to know. All right. So we need to know the gap. What have people been done? People have been researched on, and how are you going to do something to add value, to fill up the gap, the things that people have not done. Perhaps previously people have been looking into these issues in the area of management, in the areas of perhaps banking, hotel, but never in retail. So you want to do it in retail, fine. It is a gap. Might not be a very big one, but it is a gap. Or let's say, for example, people are looking into the issue approaching from brand, they're looking into the image of the brand, the reputation of the brand, but they never talk about engagement, perhaps. So you want to look into how the customer engage with the brand. So this is a gap. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to tell you. In order to identify the gaps, you need to read. It's only reading will answer that questions. Your supervisor cannot answer that question for you. Okay, so practical problems and the contradictions in the literature. Sometimes when we read the literature, we found some literature are contradict to each other, and there are a lot of recent studies. You know, previously when I do my own study, my supervisor ever asked me one thing. You know, this is very new. I tell my supervisor, one question he asked me is, you must make sure that this is new, and it is not because it is not important and no one study it. That's why you thought it is new. That's why it is not in the literature. Not many people has been doing it. Not many people has been doing it, perhaps because it is new, or perhaps because it's not important. If it is not important, it is not a hot topic, then when you do it, you need to justify the significance of it then. You need to take more effort. Doesn't mean that you cannot do it, but you need to take more effort. Okay, so because what is new now, after you complete your study, 3 years later, it might not be new anymore. So this is what I'm trying to tell my students all the time, is that the framework, the body of knowledge is the most important things. Okay, so how are you going to write your research problem, the research gap? So these are the examples. What you can do is actually, because previously when I conduct these courses, it's a whole day course, so I have this practical session with my student, but we are not going to do the practical part. What I will do with you is only just to brief on how you're going to approach each of the important elements on it. Okay, so if let's say, for example, you want to write your research, you read your literature and then you find the gaps. I always advise my students, when you write the gaps, you need to organize your problems, your issues. You can write it gap number 1, gap number 2, number 3. There's no problem with it. When I read it, I find it very easy for me to understand. Okay, but depends. Everybody have their own ways to write the gap, the issues or the problem. So what I would always advise my student also, if you don't want to write to 1, 2, 3, you write according to importance. The main one first, then followed by the not so important one. The most important issue we discuss first, then followed by the not so important issues then. Or we discuss the major one, then in the major one, then we can discuss about the sub-problems from the major issues then. For example, in the example here I give you, the current global economic crisis seems to be especially hard for large companies. Therefore, SMEs are facing strong expectations for their role to be key players when economies will be recovering from the present global recession. Previous research has also widely investigated the firm's characteristic creating profitability. They talk about what they have read then. However, the results obtained are inconclusive or even contradictory. Consequently, many researchers have concluded that more research is needed in the area. Of course, this type of justification is good enough for a paper, I would say, but for your thesis, you need to elaborate each part of it then. If let's say, for example, you cannot say that it's only previous study only found the firm's characteristic creating profitability only, but there should be other things they have find. But however, the result of 10 are inconclusive and contradictory. You need to show the proof. What is inconclusive? What is contradictory? You need to give some examples of these inconclusive and contradictory findings in your writing, and then to show that how contradictory, how inconclusive it is, and relate back to the statement here saying that, some more research is needed in the area to really understand what is really going on. Okay, how SME is going to survive during the economic crisis. So these are the things that you need to present, and how you're going to present your problems, your research gaps. Okay, then after that, after you identify the gaps, the problems, the next thing is you need to do is your problem statement. Okay, you need to have a statement to define how is this gap is going to be closed using your framework, using the things that you want to study later on. Okay, so when you write your problem statement, maybe what you can do is you may describe the ideal one, how it's supposed to be, how things should be. Then after that, you can explain but current situation. What is the situation now? There's not much understanding. People studying it, they found contradictory. And then hence you propose to improve the current situation by using the things that you are going to test. If let's say, for example, if it is a quantitative study, then you will have your independent variables, the dependent variables, your mediator, your moderating variables. Then you need to explain those things and relate it to the gaps here, and see how your variables that you're using to test is going to close the gaps. This is very important in your problem statement. Okay, you need to convince the reader with the things that you're testing would be able to close the gaps. This is very important. All right. Okay. So this is problem statement. Examples actually. So this is the example of the paper is related to food nutrition. You do not need to read every word here. I'll just describe the one that I underline it. It's mainly talking about food, food intake. How, when we take food is for what reason? So first of all, they're talking about we are eating food not just for nutrition. Nutrition is one of the benefits that we get, but we also eat food because food will affect our affective states, emotion. So actually, some foods we can call it comfort food. When we're happy, we eat it and we become more happy. We are sad, we eat it, we become happier. Things like that, So, but however, then you see, this is the ideal part. Then they start to talk about what is so not ideal one. So people found out that negative moods and positive moods may lead to preference for different types of food. Okay, and they found that people eat more of a hedonic food when they are sad and more of a less hedonic food when they are happy. All right, and then after that, however, there's a few studies offer insights into why positive moods are associated with preference for such diverse foods based on the effect regulation framework. So they're trying to tell you that, but however, there's not much not much research has been done on this particular understanding of the relationship between food and mood. So, and also this study were limited in that the effect regulation motive for choosing healthy and indulgent foods were experimentally given to participants, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so hence here, the relationship between mood, affect regulation, temporal perspective, and food choice have not been empirically tested in a comprehensive manner. So this present work extends past research on mood and food consumption by marrying the affect regulation framework with a temporal control theory explanation to enhance our understanding of the process underlying the effect of moods on preference for healthy and indulgent foods. So in particular, they will conduct 4 experiments to test the hypothesis, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is a very short, but the important things are the one that I highlighted here, I underlined here. So you can see they're trying to tell you what is ideal and what is the current understanding of the situation. You found that there's not much understanding, and then this is why we propose by having this thing here, okay, extend the past research on mood and food consumption by looking into affect regulation framework with a temporal construct theory. So he's using affect regulation framework and temporal construct theory, okay, to enhance the understanding. All right. So normally after that, perhaps we will explain the variables that we are using. Okay, then the next thing in your chapter 1 would be the issue about the research objective and the questions. Okay, arguments are, there are a lot of arguments whether objective first or question first. Generally, to be frank, my supervisor never tell me that, but Prof. Ramaya, I asked him once, he gave us an advice. He said that generally, if you are conducting quantitative research, most of the time it will be research objective, then followed by research questions. But again, different lectures have their different idea about this. Okay, so check with the supervisor whether you want to have your research objective first or your research question first. Okay, let your supervisors to answer you for that. All right, so research objective, we can list from the most general one to the most specific one. We can. So each objective should be focused on a single issues. I found that this is what I found when I read my students' proposal. I found that sometimes my research, when my students, when they are writing their research objective, is very broad. You must understand, research objective is not a managerial objective. You are not doing it for a company. You're not doing a marketing study or a management study. You're doing academic study. It should not focus on managerial actions or activities. For example, to develop an intervention plan in order to improve internal communication between top management and operational staff. No. Intervention plan, what intervention plan? To develop, this is not a good research objective. To advise management on how to improve the quality of the service delivered to the customer at what company. It becomes very managerial in a sense. We are doing academic research. I would say that research objective needs to be more specific. Okay, because later on it would help you to draw your questions, and your questions would be even more specific then. All right, if you really look into it, it will be very much related to your framework that you are doing. Okay, all right, this is why when you, from your research gaps, you must, and also your problem statement, you must discuss about the variables that you're testing. If you don't discuss the variable that you're testing, how can you proceed to the next stage of stating the research objective and research question? You can't, because you cannot be like, you don't talk about the things that you're testing at all in your research program, and also your problem statement and also your research gaps, but suddenly in your research objective and questions, you're very specific. No, you can't be. So you must have a continuation of the idea, of presentation of the idea. You must have that continuity. Okay, it's very, very important. I found when after I become examiner for many students, I found this is the common mistake that students have. Come back to your problem statement just now. Must always remember, especially for quantitative, you must remember quantitative study, your dependent variable is extremely important. Okay, so you must discuss, because your dependent variable will justify why are you conducting the research. All right, so when we talk about research objective and research questions, I would say the research questions, and when we talk about research questions, it has to be very focused. It has to be able to researchable. You don't do something, come up with a question that you cannot be able to research. It has to focus on a single topic or problem. Don't try to answer everything in the world. Like what I said, don't try to solve all the problem in the world. Right? You're not going to solve the problem in the world. You need to be very specific. PhD is very specific what you want to study. Okay, so don't use very subjective terms like good, bad, better, worse to improve the policy, to provide a better policy. No, that is not. Okay, does not answer. Also, you do not, for example here, why does X occur and what are the main factors contributing to X? So obviously the second one is better. The reason being is when you ask why does X occur, it can have the possibility could be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 type of possibility. But if you are very focused, let's say, for example, what are the main factors contributing to X? So you are only looking at the factors only. Okay, and this particular research questions has to be feasible and specific. It has to answer within the practical constraints because you know that this is, you're doing a PhD study, you have limitation in terms of time and resources. You must use a specific, well-defined concepts. The more clearer it is, the better it is. Okay, you can use 5WH. What, for example, example here, what effect does social media have on people's mind compared to what effect does daily use of FB on have on the attention span of under 16? You can see the second one is very, very specific, very well defined. Only they're not going to study everyone, but they are only going to study those below 16. They're going to look into the daily use of FB only. And they are going to look at attention span, not any other things. Only the attention span of those people under 16 for their usage on the FB, not on other social media platform. So, you know, this is what I'm trying to tell you all is that when you want to do a study, when it is a PhD or master by research study, it has to be more specific. Okay, you are not going to solve a general problem. Do not ask for a conclusive solution, policy, or course of action. For example, what should the government do about low voter turnout? No, this is not a good topic, especially in quantitative. Quantitative research is very specific. It will be better for you to better define your question become, what are the most effective communication strategy to increase the voter turnout among the under 30s? Very specific. Under
Hello, Dr. Grace. Hello, Dr. Grace. I think we are missing you. Are you there? Dr. Grace.
just Google the data. Sorry.
Dr. Grace, it's intermittent, okay?
Sorry.
It's intermittent. Sometimes we lost you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The line is not very good, is it?
Yeah, but it's okay. You can continue.
So sorry. Bear with me because I'm in the office. So the line in the Chancellery office is not very good. I'm so sorry. If you can easily find your answers using facts and figures, then this is not it doesn't worth a PhD research. Okay. Provide scope of debate and deliberations. It has to be provide a scope for more debates and deliberations. It shouldn't be a too simple statement. It has to be relevant and original, like what I say, okay, contributes to the topical, social, and academic debates that have not already been answered, okay, has not been already been answered. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, earth-shaking, okay, but it has to be original. So, all right, so next one. So then we basically cover the main parts for chapter 1. We go into chapter 2. Literature review, how to write a review. Again, a lot of different people have different ways and ideas about how to write a reviews. In some school, in some university, the hypothesis is proposed in chapter 2. In some university, the format is the proposed hypothesis is proposed in chapter 3. My own training is hypothesis has to be proposed with a proper hypothesis development stage. Hence, I put it in my chapter 3. In the chapter 2, I review my literature, but in chapter 3, from the review of the literature, I get the one that support my proposition, and then I put it in the hypothesis development. Then I propose my hypothesis in chapter 3. It all depends. So check with the supervisor which would be the better one, because I cannot answer that for you. Yeah. Perhaps Dr. Izyanti maybe can give some guidelines what is the university format in that sense then. But nevertheless, when we talk about literature review, I would say very important. Many people only give us the review. When I read student writing, I found one weakness which is very important. This you can read yourself, but the important things I would like to stress is that many students love to tell me what have previous study found out. What in this study, in according to Lee and Lee 2019, there is a relationship between A and B. According to this and this, there is a relationship between this and this. According to this, only like that. But students never discuss why this thing happened and what happened. You know, A and B has a relationship. It could be because of the methodology or the context of the testing. Because these are the things that you can argue, you can argue actually A and B has a relationship, but this person, they conduct the research for people of any age, doesn't matter. But now you want to study young consumer. This could be different. These are the arguments. That's why when you write your literature review, when you review the literature, you need to not only review the findings only, you need to look into the methodology as well. Whether the methodology are the same, because these are the things that you can compare. Yeah? And also when you're reading the literature also, another thing that is very important that you can find out is actually the theories that they use. Because when you read the paper, many good paper published in very good journal, they will request you to have backup built based on a very strong theoretical foundation. So this theory that they use actually give you some idea on what are the theory that you can use to explain your framework, because we are using theory to explain your framework. Its framework must be supported by theories or concept. If it is not supported by theory and concept, you could have 1,000, 2,000 factors to test. Actually, theory and framework give you some scope, border for your study, because it is impossible for us to conduct a study that can answer everything in the world. It is impossible. You cannot have the best research in the world. There is definitely error terms. There is definitely weaknesses, limitations to your study. We need to recognize those limitations. That's all. And also you need to based on a certain theory, and this theory will justify why you are testing the variable that you are testing. This is why theories are extremely important. When you review your literature, you read your literature, those are the things that you need to pay more attention to. What are the theories that they use, how they do it, what are the methodology, how they do it, and the findings, what happened. Is there a significant relationship? There is no significant relationship. In literature review, we review them. We can provide contradictory findings, because we need to know what is the current, most updated study has been done on the topics that you're interested in. Yeah? So we need to critique the literature. We need to know, let's say, for example, a previous study, they used ABC to test these particular things. But whether ABC is good enough, is that CD, E, ABC, DE? No, there's no one testing DE, but actually people test DE in other field. So these are the things that you need to argue in the literature. Whether the literature right now is comprehensive enough or not. By right, it shouldn't be that incomprehensive. Like if it is already well established, what can you do to add on to the newness of the study then, right? So you need to, if there is a contradictory findings, there's actually give you some reason to understand more. You get me, right? So don't get panicked when you find in some study it is not significant, in some study it is significant. But in the end of the day, you need to make a standing. When you come to your hypothesis development, you need to make a standing. Yeah, in the case here, I think there is a significant relationship, and this relationship is a positive one. If you're doing your master degree PhD study, I would say when you develop your hypothesis, you need to be directional. You need to have a standing already, because once you review your literature, you need to have some idea about whether this is going to be a positive or a negative between dependent and dependent variables, whether you increase the attitude, whether intention will increase or not. You cannot say that you just want to test there's a relationship between intention and attitude. Everybody know there's a relationship, but perhaps you just test whether there is a relationship or not. It's a compulsory thing. It is already compulsory. You do not need to say that. Also, everybody understand you have a vital hypothesis. You want to see whether there is a relationship, whether attitude is causing intention. We know you are testing that. But what we want to know is whether this relationship, in your judgment, in the case that you're going to test, in the context of your testing, whether it is positive or negative. You need to make that standing. And how do you make that standing? Is basically from the review of your literature. Okay, so the way to write a literature review, many ways. I give you some advices only. What you can do is perhaps you can first introduce the subject of the study. If you're going to study effectiveness, organizational effectiveness, important things here to me is basically effectiveness, and it is in the organizational term. Okay, not in the system effectiveness, but this is organizational effectiveness, for example. And you need to highlight the problems. What is this? What is the meaning of it? Okay, and how important this, how this organizational effectiveness has been studied. Okay, summarize the work done so far on the topic which convinced the reader. It has been done. People has been studying this, and they let it. This topic, this effectiveness, when they measure effectiveness, what do they measure in a sense? And carefully pave the way to the next step to develop a more viable model, in a sense, in your the one that you want to propose as your hypothesis in the context of your study. But this is what I'm saying, like this could be used very much in your hypothesis development. I think would be very good. In hypothesis development, you need to, normally I advise my student to present mostly the sources that support your standing, if you think there is a positive relationship. So in your hypothesis development, by right, this literature that you propose supposed to be those supporting or proven there is a positive significant relationship between A and B. The one that is proposing a negative relationship one, then you just lay it out in your literature review, but not in your hypothesis development. This is normally how I look at it, and the logic of it, so that you wouldn't get yourself confused. Then when you write your literature review, then people are very concerned about, how high is the similarity index? How come I write the similarity index is very high? When it is high, then it will affect you will have problem then. So paraphrasing is very important. You need to learn how to paraphrase. Do not copy exactly. If you want to copy exactly, you need to cite the sources, and there are rules to cite the sources. So these are the things that we need to learn. Okay, so how to effectively paraphrasing, I give you some guideline, but not as much necessary follow this guideline. You can follow any other guidelines as well, because this one also I get it from online sources. So first of all, we read the original text. Okay, you read the original text many times until you understand the meaning of the text. Then after that, you put it aside, you write your own on a card. You jot down the words, important word first, and then after that, you try to link the word that you're writing. And then after that, you recheck it back with the original one, read back the original one, cross-check it, and then re-look into the one that you are writing. Make sure that you don't left any important things, the important points. This is the reason why you write, then after that you have to go back and check it again. Okay, so use quotation mark to identify any unique terms and phraseology, because some terms are very difficult for you to find replacement, isn't it? This is what we understand. Sometimes really difficult for you to find. It's a very it's academic terms, it's scientific terms. Then you can use it back, but you just use the quotation marks. And record the sources, including the patch on your note cards, so that you can credit it easily if you decide to incorporate the material into your paper. Previously, when I do paraphrasing, I use my Excel to do it. Normally, when I key into my Excel database, I just copy paste into my the original text into my Excel database. Whenever I want to use it, then I'll start to compare different sources. In the Excel worksheet, then I will compare this paper and that paper, and then I try to paraphrase it in a sense, comparing not only one source but multiple source in a sense. So these are the skills that you have to learn. Do it by yourself. Doesn't matter how many times I mention it here, there's no use if you don't practice it. You can only able to do it after you practice it. Okay, so this is the example I have from the give it when I'm doing the workshop with my students. Maybe I can show it to you. Actually, it's an exercise, but then here I give you the answers. So the original text is students frequently overuse direct quotation in taking notes, and as a result, they overuse quotation in the final paper. Probably only about 10% of your final manuscript should appear as directly quoted matter. Therefore, you should strive to limit the amount of the exact transcribing of source materials while taking notes, according to these sources in 1976 by Lester. Okay, so a legitimate paraphrase is like this. In research papers, students often quote excessively, failing to keep quoted material down to a desirable level. Since the problem usually originates during taking notes, it is essential to minimize the material recorded verbatim. Lester, 1976. But the one that you forget is actually, you can see here, the sequence of the paper, the points are exactly the same as the original text, just that they changed the wordings on it, and some more they don't actually quote, don't cite this paper, and this is wrong. Okay, so must remember you must do a proper citation. Okay, so this is the exercise. Can I skip this, Dr. Izyanti? Because I don't think we have time for this.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So paraphrasing, what I say, you can paraphrase it in the text. You can do example like this, whether you want to have them in the front. McFarlane, 2001, argues that the young people can be encouraged to stop smoking by blah, 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 or you can have it in the end of the sentence. These are two ways. Our students love to do this. According to McFarlane, young people can be encouraged to stop smoking by blah, blah, blah. And then 10 according, in a paragraph, 10 according. So more according to it. It's not interesting when you read it. Like what I always argue with my student is, you only tell me what's happened, but never why this thing happened. Okay, direct quotes you're quoting, then you just don't forget you must put this here. All right, and then you have to quote the person, the year, and also the page number. If you're quoting a certain page, one page only, it will be P dot. If you're quoting more than one page, then it will be PP dot. Okay, these are the common rules. I think you know about this. Okay, and also with your quoting of papers, quoting of sentences, if you short quotation, then you can put it in the sentence or in the same paragraph. But if the quotation is very long quotes, then you need to more than 40 words or more, then you have to have it in a paragraph by itself, and it's a separate paragraph. All right, so it would be better for you to start with new line with a colon as well, and then you need to state the page number as well. Okay, so these are the important things. So then we proceed into finish paraphrasing. Am I going too fast, Dr. Izyanti?
Dr. Grace, it's fine for me. For me lah, I don't know the student, because usually we have the Q&A in intermittently, but since we don't want to interrupt you, we'll do it later lah, kan, Dr. Grace?
Yes, can we do it later?
Yeah, sure,
in case
sure.
we will drag too long the time, I'll just finish up the part first. So methodology, then we come to chapter 3. Chapter 3, like what I tell you, it depends on the methodology parts, whether your hypothesis development shall be in your chapter 3 or not. It depends on the format of the university. They will give you a format. But the one that I am having myself is actually I will have my hypothesis development in chapter 3. under methodology, and I present my framework in methodology in chapter 3. Okay, so it has to be well written and organized. It will specify the research operations that you will undertake and the way you interpret the result of these operations in relation to the research problem. Okay, so if you can see here, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, they are all interrelated. So you must have a nice flow of your idea in a sense. So just don't describe what you intend to achieve from applying the methods that you choose, but state how you will spend your time while applying these methods. So you must explain in detail. This is what they mean here. You cannot assume people know what you are doing. Okay, it is not a list of the tasks that you will do, but you have to explain how are you going to perform the task. If there is a questionnaire, you need to explain what is not only the structure of the questionnaire, you need to explain how are you going to develop the questionnaires, including the developing process. How do you do your translation? Okay, whether you do back-to-back translation or you do, for example, you do a what was being suggested. Let's say, for example, you will have a first person to translate it, and then after that, a second person to translate another one. Then you will have a third person to cross-check the translation of the first two translator. So there are many ways, so if you are doing back-to-back translation, you need to explain how do you do back-to-back translation. So if you're doing pilot tests, you need to explain why are you doing the pilot test, and how you do it, and what is the result of the pilot test. Is very important. Okay, your questionnaire, how you collect the data, who are your population, who is your samples, how do you determine your sample size, and including later on in the latter part would be how are you going to analyze the data, what are the tests that you're going to use to test the data. Okay, you will check for validity, for example, reliability. You will use structural equation modeling to test the hypothesis. What software do you use? What guideline do you use? There's supposed to be a guideline on the threshold that you will refer to. Those are the things that you need to state in your chapter 3. So it is not only just a list of the tasks, but also explain how this task is performed. It's very important. All right, so and of course, we understand there is limitations. One of the issues, I think, in quantitative study, later on, people will ask you, how do you address different type of biases? There are so many different type of biases, how to address these biases. So you need to explain, because now you're only planning how to do your research, right? So you still have time to minimize the challenge or the limitations, actually. So based on the stage, chapter 3, when you plan how are you going to conduct your research in the future, you by right should think of all the challenge and the biases that you might have. And then you try to minimize those biases and challenges. It's only those you cannot, then you recognize it in your limitation, or you have it in your scope of study. Because if scope of study is in your chapter 1, scope of study will actually provide a scope for your study, which means you will tell your reader you're not studying more than your scope. It's very important. You're studying young adults. You're not studying those mature adults. Then you need to define young adults, for example. Who are we call young adults? Is very important. So you provide a scope, and of course you must justify why young adults. Then now, of course, So these are the things. You want to study KK. Why KK? You cannot say that because I stay in KK, I want to do a study in KK. It is not a good reason to do scientific research. You cannot say that because I work with a bank, that's why I want to do a study in bank. Because I work in the hotel industry, I want to do a study in hotel. That doesn't justify a scientific. It's not an objective reason to do it. Okay, so it relates to the significance of the study. It relates to the scope of the study. So you need to state those things in a scope. What are you studying? And then after that, those things you still cannot overcome the biases, the challenges, then we recognize it in your limitations in the chapter 5 later, in the last chapter. Okay, so those are the things that you can do. Of course, whether to do a research or not, what type of research that you will be doing, whether it will be experimental whether it will be using, whether it will be a longitudinal or cross-sectional, whether you will be doing a questionnaire survey. Those are depends on the topics that you want to do. I would say the most suitable topics that want to do. How you get this idea on how to do it would be maybe from your literature. Your literature can actually help you to have grasp, get some idea on the type of the methodology, because in the previous study, they are doing the study, for example, experimental type of study. Then, you know, there must be a reason why the study was conducted using experiments, or it was prepared as a case study, or people are doing a longitudinal study or a cross-sectional study. So previous study can give you some idea because one of the issue I think for most of the students would be, what methodology shall I follow? You know, what type of study shall I conduct then? Okay, so these are the things. We have different types of course, whether it is exploratory, whether it is descriptive, whether it is hypothesis testing, and then this will look into whether you are doing a quantitative study or qualitative studies then, yeah. So the one that is very common in quantitative study would be, we do hypothesis testing, would be the one that is very common lah. Hypothesis testing, we test the nature of the relationship, or this establish the differences between the groups or the interdependence of the two or more factors in the situation. So in hypothesis testing, normally we will have the dependent variables and the independent variables. Just to be frank with you, if it is descriptive, if your study is only descriptive, you will have a problem definitely when you are facing your examiners, because descriptive data is not, it doesn't have a predictive power. Frequency means doesn't have a predictive power. So which means you collect a sample from the population, your sample only describe what happened with your sample. If you're only testing the descriptive part of it only, it means you cannot predict, and with this condition, what will happen in reality. But if in the future, but hypothesis testing normally with a certain software or tools, you would allow you to have predictive power. Okay, that's why qualitative, quantitative, there's a long debated issues. All right, so dependent variables and independent variables testing, now the framework is more complicated. If you have a mediators, you have a moderators, especially when you have a mediators, then you normally don't call your independent variable as independent variables. We don't call your dependent variables independent variables. When you have a mediator, we call them exogenous variables and endogenous variables. Generally, this is what we call them. So a sales, for example, you want to know what a sales manager want to know if the sales of the company will increase if they double the ads expenses. So does it mean that they increase the ad expenses, the sales will increase? So ad expenses is the independent, sales is the dependent variables. They want to test whether there's a relationship. So from there, we write our theoretical, we prepare our theoretical framework. A lot of arguments, a lot of people ask me, not a lot, but they are students asking me, Doctor, whether it is a theoretical framework or a conceptual framework. Many different types of explanation if you really read it. Some say that theoretical framework is more for qualitative study, conceptual framework is more for quantitative study. Not necessary. What I can say is that there's a difference between theoretical and conceptual framework. If it is based on theories, based on theory or based on theorists, then we can call it a theoretical framework. If it is, but sometimes we don't have theories to test. Some framework have theories, but not the theories doesn't explain the whole framework. They are combining theories and concepts and model. Then in that sense, many people calling it a conceptual framework. This is what I understand. Okay, my understanding might be wrong, but you need to read more, I find a source here that actually detailing the difference between conceptual framework and theoretical framework. Maybe you can go back to the same website and have a look on the differences between the two. There are high similarities. Normally, theoretical framework is based on existing theory. Okay, but if it is not doesn't have a theory, a specific theories to explain the framework, or a theory or a set of theories, then you include your own idea without the theories or whatsoever, then it could be called a conceptual framework then. So this conceptual framework used to be grounded in the concepts that provides for the main variables in the research inquiry. It is something that the research scholars develop themselves based on the theories. All right, okay. All right, so please read this in order to understand more about the difference between conceptual and also theoretical framework. And then we would talk about what do you expect from the study then. Okay, maybe I think in UMS we don't need to have this part, right, Dr. Izyanti?
Yes, it is not necessarily.
Not necessary, yes, not necessary. So we just up to the part of the methodology will do, right? Then we have to,
especially for PhD.
Especially for PhD, yeah. It's only until methodology, then we do not need to have the parts for the expected result implications and the conclusions. We do not need to have those things, right? And of course, the references is another issue that is very important. It in your proposal, yeah. Right now we don't. My style is I don't comment referencing anymore because this is your job. To get it right is your job. It's our job as a student. To get the right referencing format is our job. This is the basic requirements. I normally in the Viva, I don't have time to comment referencing anymore. But it is actually extremely important because yeah, it will impact the reader's mood, like what Dr. Izyanti says, when you have so much mistakes. What is in the text is not in the reference list. You use the wrong reference format, and then especially in the reference list, the lists are not complete. The lists are not consistent in terms of the format. Main pakai copy paste saja begitu kan, tidak boleh ya. So you must know, and this references format or whatsoever, your proposal is all depends on the university format, because many university will provide a gaya penulisan, a writing style. If, for example, in UMS we have UMS writing style, I would advise you from the very first beginning when you write something, you already use the UMS writing style. It will save your time to do all the editing, all the formatting later on. I am advising you based on my experience, because later on you will find that formatting and also editing will take a long time actually. So might as well from the beginning you're already using the right format and the right style to prepare for your proposal. And the references also, I think UMS is, we allow, right, Dr. Izyanti, even though we do have a gaya penulisan UMS, but we allow students to follow APA as well, isn't it?
Yes, APA.
Yeah, because if you look into the gaya penulisan UMS, if I'm not wrong, I don't know the latest one, but the previous one is, it is highly debatable whether it's APA or not. And also just to let you know, APA also change all the time. They have a new edition from different type of APA format. So please use the latest APA format, right, Dr. Izyanti? We use the APA format 7th edition, right?
The 7th edition.
7th edition. So 7th edition, they are, sorry, because the sources that I give it here to you is not 7th edition. This is still the 6th edition. There are some changes in the 7th edition and the 6th edition. Changes is that, if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, when you're writing for your thesis, when the first time you quote the sources, if you have more than 2 authors, you have more than authors. you have two authors here, normally in the first citation in the text, if you have one or two authors, you need to cite both names, Lee and Lee, or any other name. And then if you have more than 3 to 5 authors, you cite all the authors as well. Okay, and in the subsequent citation in the text, then you use the first author at all. Okay, all right. So if you have more, but if you are writing for a journal, okay, under the APA 7 edition, from the first time you cite the authors in a journal paper, you can add all them already. No need to list all the authors. This is the changes that I understand from the 7 edition. Previously, you have to, for the first time, you have to cite all the authors. Then after that, the second time you use PHANG at all. But in the journal paper, you don't have to. In the journal paper, you can just go straight to PHANG at all. This is what I understand. Okay, so there are some changes. Please kindly make sure that you know the format, the letters format. Also make sure that it is consistent in the sense that you're following the same format, the APA format. Referencing can be very frustrating. So there are ways to do it. Kita ada different type of software to help you with the referencing. So you need to make sure that you join those workshops from the library. Many are free, so you just need to learn how to use it. That's all. Okay, and that will help. You will actually save a lot of your time. But still, you need to cross-check because sometimes even with the software, also I found that sometimes it doesn't appear nicely. So for me, I still cross-check myself. The problem with this issue like typo errors, like referencing issues inside the reference issues. This thing, it will disturb the writing if you do not have a good one. And it will give your examiner an impression you are not being serious. So it's very important for you to make sure that what you have in your text, you have it in your reference list. What you don't have in the text, don't list in your reference list. Is very important because we will check, even though we might not mention, and it will form an impression. We will form an impression that whether you are serious about this thing or not. Okay, all right. So I don't intend to go into the. Of course, there are many guidelines lah. You just download. There are so many free guidelines available by different university. You just download it. I think it it's okay then. Sometimes we do secondary citation. Not very encouraging lah, but sometimes we do that. We don't read the original paper because we can't find the original paper. Sometimes we read this paper, then we cite this paper, but in the paper they're citing another paper. So this is the way how you do it. So as cited in whose paper in the originally. All right. So when you provide in the list here, you just provide the original paper will do. So some of the common mistake, I'm going towards the end of my sharing. So failure to be concise, being all over the map without a clear sense of purpose. I think this is very common for students. You're trying to answer, to save the world, to do a very, how to say, you're not being focused, not specific. Failure to cite landmark works in your literature review. You want to do a study on a particular topics, but you forgot the most important or most established researchers, and this is a big problem. So this shows that you are not reading enough because you don't know who is actually in a particular field. Just like when you're doing a research on service quality and you're not citing Paraphrasing. Failure to delineate the contextual boundaries of your research, for example, time, place, and people. Failure to develop a coherent and persuasive arguments for the proposed research. Failure to stay focused on the research program, going off on unrelated tangents. Okay, you talk too much, too many things. One common mistake that I read from my students when I become the examiner is that students love to claim things in your chapter 1, chapter 2, when you're writing about the topics that you want to test. For example, the variables you want to test. Many students love to present everything that they read in the literature they found. But they must understand the next question when I read your literature is that I will ask, if those things are being tested previously, why are you not testing them in your current framework? Because you are the one who put them in your writing. Previous studying A, B, C, D, but you only study D. My question would be, why are you not studying A, B, C then? Why only studying D? You know, so you must justify that as well. All right. So, some students overclaim. They are not studying one topic, but they are studying too many things. Sorry. They are studying one topic, but they are saying that, let's say, for example, you're only studying brand image. But then when in your literature, you're not only talking about brand image, you talk about brand reputation, you talk about brand awareness, but you're not testing brand awareness, you're not testing brand reputation. Then why are you putting it in your literature and also in your chapter 1, especially chapter 1? You know, that you are actually trigger your examiner, you ring the bell, that for them to ask you the question, why are you not testing? Why these two things are not in your framework then? You're killing yourself in that sense. So please don't overclaim. Don't overclaim, don't also make sure that you need to make sure that there is a continuity of point. The other main issue I found from my student is that paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 are jumping points. When you read the whole page, I found that my students' idea is jumping here and there. So when you read it, it's not a nice reading. A good proposal is supposed to be the one that anyone read it, you will feel, wow, it is. I can get your idea 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clearly. Okay, sloppy and imprecise writing, poor grammar. This one you have to go and look for grammar editing if you cannot write good English. Don't expect your lecturer, your supervisor to become your English teacher. They are not trained English teacher. The English might not be as good as you as well. Okay, too much detail on minor issues, but not enough detail on the major issues. You talk about a lot of small little things, but you never rest the main things, and didn't properly check referencing formats and in-text citation. This is the one that we mentioned just now. So attend seminar, my advice, attend seminars, attend conferences, attend workshops, and importantly, practice technical writing. Because talk, you discuss with your supervisor 100 times, also there's no use if you don't write. So get a pen and write it out. Okay, and don't save the world. Just conduct a research that can actually grant you a degree, a PhD degree or a master by research degree. It is good enough. Okay, so don't save the world. Practice writing. Just don't simply talk on it. This is what my advice will be. All right, you need to start writing in any point, I would say. Okay, I think that's all, Dr. Izanti. That's all from my part.
Thank you, Dr. Grace. Oh my God, it's so interesting. Yeah.
I hope it is. I don't hope you don't fall asleep.
It's interesting because I can reminisce my PhD time as well, because I remember that during my first semester, I think I even called you after I met my supervisor. I called Dr. Grace. I said, Grace, because we are close. Me and Dr. Grace are close. I treat she is like I always seek advice from her. So I said, Grace, how are this? My supervisor always asks me to change things, And I remember Dr. Grace told me like this, Yan, she asked you to change, meaning that you are doing work. And she is doing work as well, because that time I was searching for gaps, if I'm not mistaken, that time. Can Grace? Okay, there's a lot of text from this talk that I would really love to point out. But before that, can we, before saya bercakap, I think better take question and answers from the floor. If there's any, you may ask Dr. Grace.
Yeah, you may ask me questions, or
Yes,
maybe you
I
can
saw-
perhaps give me some advice. Oh my God, Rahim is here.
Dr. Brahim, good morning. And
Hi,
also
Rahim.
Dr. Asma is also here. Dr. Asma.
Hi.
Dr. Asma.
I'm just like what I say to you just now. These are all my own experiences and my advices. It might not be applicable to everyone, but I hope it will benefit some of the students, because these are the common things that we found as not only as a student but also as an examiner. You know, so if our student can improve on those issues that we have mentioned, I think it would help them really to improve their proposal.
Yeah, and also
And you know, sorry, class, please remember, examiners are not there to fail you. I always tell my students, you do not need to be afraid of the examiners. They are not there to fail you, but we are there to help you to improve your proposal. So all the criticism that you get, or the comments that you get from the examiners or even your supervisors, they are actually meant to help you. You have to get it with, receive it with an open heart. And most of the time, the comments on the proposal are helping you to see your blind points, because when you are too much focused on the topic, you might not see what is the weakness of your proposal. So when your examiner or the supervisor look at it, they see it from a different point of view, and then, their opinion might not be 100% acceptable, but this is why in the end of the day, you still need to go back to and discuss with the supervisor. But there are definitely advisors to help you to improve your proposal. It's very important, because some students take it rather negatively, I would say.
yes. And I also like Grace, when it is so specific, when they write their proposal that specific, until the examiners don't know what to ask already, because it's so specific. They only ask things like the things that they're not clear about. But that's one of the good proposal that I can say, like, Grace, Dr. Grace, like the students wrote that specific. And I'm glad that Dr. Grace can give a talk today, because you know why? Because there are students who come to us, to the postgraduate studies section, and inform us, Doctor, I need to present my proposal this semester. This semester is how many weeks? 14 weeks kan? This semester, doctor. I said, okay, no problem. If you want to present, you can present, but we still don't have any topics. They thought that it's not that easy, but it's possible to be done, right, Dr. Grace? But it has to be, tapi dia perlu ada steps, kan, doctor?
Yes, a lot of students set a target for themselves. It is good to set a target for yourself. I need to complete this within 3 years. But then you need to work in order to justify that's 3 years then. You cannot say that I want to graduate within 3 years and that's it. And you're not doing anything. It is impossible.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So in order to graduate within the time frame that you have set, you need to plan for it. And you must understand, I always tell my student, it is like PhD study is like you're swimming in the sea. Your supervisor, the only thing that we can do is we give you a pelampong only, a floaters. Then you need to, or we throw you a compass and you need to find your own direction, because this is your study. This is your PhD, and we guide you definitely, but you don't expect to get answers from your supervisors. Actually, you don't expect, you cannot expect that you ask one question, your supervisor need to give you the answer. No, it is you are the one who is, in the end of the day, you are the one who claim to be the expert in that particular field, and not your supervisor.
Like, for example, there are students who even ask the supervisor, Doctor, is this the gap? Can you tell me, is this the gap? I was like, I don't think
it is unfair. It's very unfair to the supervisor, I would say. Yeah.
Something for the supervisors as well,
My
because that's your topic.
own training is because I did it in Japan. It's very old professors who has vast experience in consumer behavior. He will not criticize you, but Japanese doesn't criticize you openly. He will not answer you back, you know. But when you learn, eventually you know what are the questions that you can ask actually, and what are the questions you cannot ask to your supervisor. There are things you cannot just simply ask without preparing, you know. As a student, we go and see lecturers. I always say that your time with your supervisor, you don't have much time with your supervisor because your supervisor are busy, you are busy as well. So you need to be prepared before you go and see your supervisor. You need to know what you want to ask. If you want to ask this question, what are what have you read on the related topics to the questions that you ask? So those are the things that you must do as from the part of the student, so that you save both time. You will not dragging too much time and finding to finalize the research proposal, the framework. Some students will also, you know, saying that I spend a lot of time finalize my proposal. My supervisor doesn't allow me or not approve of my final proposal. There is definitely reason for that proposal not to be approved. Because yeah, there must be a reason. If not, it is impossible. Because most of the time, what we are seeing is that for me as a supervisor is that when I look at a proposal, what I will think of is how are you going to do it? Can you do it or not? Is this worth to be a PhD study or not? And if you do it later on, how will your examiner ask questions? You know, so what type of questions your examiner will ask, and those questions are the one that we need to really improve on. So this is what I always think as a supervisor in that sense. So as a student, you need to think like that as well. Not only don't let your supervisor do the thinking only. You have to think about it yourself, because this is your, like what I keep on telling my students, this is your PhD. This PhD doesn't belong to your supervisor. The most that you have in your PhD, the thesis, the final thesis that you have, your supervisor only got a name only. The whole thing belongs to you.
Yeah, you got the doctor.
Yeah.
Grace, I have a question, Dr. Grace. In terms of in the methodology, do the students need to also include their instruments, their questionnaire?
They need to explain in the methodology. They need to explain by right when they write the proposal. They already have their measurement, so which means they might not have the final questionnaire, but they need to have the measurement items. Then if it is quantitative, so they need to
It's quantitative.
Because those are the things that I normally first, as a supervisor, the first thing I normally check with my student is their framework, and later on I will look into one by one the variables and how do they measure the variables and what are the sources of they get from these variables. Because sometimes students they just want to get the measurement items for a particular variable. They get it from not very good sources. I'm telling them this is a suicide action because you get it from not established paper. What you will face is later on your measurement items are not good enough to measure the variable, and in the end of the day you will suffer when you are analyzing the data and to when you are testing the hypothesis. So everything needs to be correct from A to Z now, I would say. So it would be better for us to be more more particular. You have a lot of arguments in the very first part of your discussion with the supervisor. My supervisory with my students are always very argumentative in the very first stage, because we have to argue with them why. I always argue with them why these variables and not the other variables, and why these measurement items and why not the other measurement items. Because when we measure something, different scholar can use different measurement items, right? So we need to find the most suitable one actually.
Do you think that the students need to do their pilot tests before the proposal defense?
What I always do, and just to be frank, me myself, I'm not only doing pilot tests, I conduct study 1, study 2. It's a real study because I need to publish. So it depends. In UMS, I found that the practice that we do, macam it seems like one study is good enough to justify for your PhD, then I think that's okay lah. But in a different university, you have different type of requirements. So, but in UMS, I think if what is the purpose of testing to conduct the pilot test is very important. We want to test the measurement item whether it is good enough or not. If you are getting it from very established journals. Let's say, for example, this measurement item has been tested 1,000 times. Why do you need to retest it again? It's just like whether we need to test factor, principal components factor analysis or not, right? So exploratory component factor analysis or not. So those are the things if it is very established, all are very established. But when you combine them together, maybe this is another issue. So whether you need to rerun first testing the things or not. Normally, what I do is I ask my student to do cognitive interviewing. These terms I learned it from Ramaya. Ramaya is the one who tell me this term. Cognitive interviewing is actually according to him. I also believe so. I've been conducting numbers of research. I always believe it is maybe better for us to ask 10% one by one check our questionnaire. I think that would be better compared to you collect 50 respondents, just simply questionnaire, and then after that,
for the sake of getting the result.
Yeah, because 50, what test can you test? A t-test only? Not many tests you can test with 50 respondents. So I would prefer to do a 10%, but one by one checking your questionnaire, checking for grammar, checking for understanding, checking for reason. Then those process you jot down what they understand, what they misunderstand. Then from there you improve. I think that cognitive interviewing would actually be more beneficial. I really think it is more beneficial to improve
rather than just
collect a 50 or 100
pilot studies.
Yeah. I don't, and you are at 50, then you can't use them anymore in your main study. You're wasting
another 50 respondent.
Yeah, because you cannot reuse the same respondent as well, can? So
I would also like to bring the attention of the students here that if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Grace, your current PhD student who just completed her proposal defense prior to the
proposal defense.
She managed to publish in Scopus. Am I correct?
Yes. I always think the students because you must understand. We must understand. Not all students are lecturers. If I get a student who is a lecturer, existing lecturer who did research all the time, it is very easy. I don't have to worry whether you know how to properly collect data, properly analyze data, properly write the data or not. I do not have to worry. But when my students are not, it's just a student without much experience in conducting research, then I would say you need exercise. When I say you need exercise, then you need to practice
writing,
collect data, because you never collect data before. Really, scientifically collecting data are very different. So you might not know how to do it properly. The more you do, because human, we learn by practice. So you need to practice it yourself. And then the good thing about it is actually doesn't matter the first thing that you collect, the framework will be changed a little bit or not, or later on, right? Because this is your very first study. Maybe you haven't finalized your framework, but you have a directions, generally a few variables, but it is not fully finalize the framework. I would advise you, perhaps you can start test the water, collect data and test run it, and you can publish paper. Actually, my student did it. I forced her. She did it and she published in the Scopus
journal. The word is forced, Dr. Grace. You use the word force. I forced her.
Not to say force, but I would say I advise in a sense.
Because I do believe also when you do your proposal defense and you mentioned to the panels that this paper has been
part of the framework has been tested in
part of it. So macam the examiners will be okay lah, boleh lah this,
Many of the students also in marketing. Brahim was the one before, he presents his viva. His paper was published in Scopus.
Oh
What
my
can we
God.
argue then? You know, oh,
Nobody can argue that.
people can be very, very convinced. Yeah, your examiner will be very convinced. This is one of the way actually. They will be very convinced with your writing because
And your ideas. What
yeah, because
proposal is still ideas, right?
yeah, because but however, make sure that you don't plagiarize yourself.
Yeah, do not
make sure
publish
that,
all, student. Do not publish all. Later, your idea will be taken.
yeah, but then on university and country also lah. Some very particular, some not so particular on those things.
Yeah. Any question from the floor? I asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, Clara, I mean, Flores, do you have any question? You can ask me any question. If I know how to answer, I answer lah. If I don't, we find the answer together.
Any question from international students, perhaps? Do you have question to Dr. Grace? Tak ada.
Hello, doctor.
Hi. Yes.
I want to know more about the framework. Like, could you give me some examples of how to write a good framework?
How to write a framework? You want to, first of all, you need to know what you want to study. What is the things that interest you? I always ask my students, first of all, you need to know what you want to study, what interests you. From there, you start to look for papers, look for the research that has been done on the particular field that you are interested in. And from the reading, it's only from the reading it will tell you what is happening. Because no one can tell you what is happening, how will be your framework to be. Just to give you an advice, just like me, I'm doing marketing related topics. My marketing, consumer behavior is the gist of marketing. It's a mother of marketing because we need, our main job of marketing is to fulfill customer needs and wants. So in a sense, customer is very important to us. Most of our study is basically to predict consumer behavior. So in order to predict consumer behavior, we need to understand what is happening that will actually causing them to behave in a certain way. So that is the reason why if you look into marketing study, many times we study issues, for example, from the whole process of getting to know you have a need for a product until the time you buy the product and also use the product or dispose the product in a sense. So it's like a line, So in order to know which part that I want to study, you need to see which part you are interested in. I always tell my student in marketing, you need to know which part you are interested in, and then you focus on the part. For example, I want to know post-purchase. After buying the things, what will happen to the consumer after they're buying the things? So I will read the topics related to post-purchase. Whether after buying the things, whether the things will be, the consequences, the next things will be whether they will rebuy the products or they will not stop buying the product or they will return the product, or perhaps they will say bad things about the product, for example. So these are the things that I want to know. So I read more on those parts. You have to tell yourself what you are interested in the first place. Then after that, when you get things that you are interested in, then you look into whether this thing is significant or not, marketing wise, whether it is important, it has the marketing implication or not. Okay, then from there you will see, then you can balance up whether there's a new things and also the important things. And from there you will be able to see, okay, fine, if there's a case, I want to see what is the discontinuation behavior, for example. People for not continue to do something. Most of the people study to continue do something, but I want to study not to continue do something, for example. So what causing people not to continue to use, for example, social media? Okay, one of my students is doing that, for example. Okay, so what is the social media discontinuation intention? So I want to say, oh, then when I read this thing, I found that most of the time, because they are fatigued with the social media, then I look into fatigue. When people look fatigue, what causes fatigue then I looked into if I'm interested to see what causes fatigue, rather than the consequences of fatigue more. But looking into the earlier part of the fatigue concept, what causes fatigue, then I try to see what are the factors causing fatigue. Then eventually you get a framework. I do not know. This is the way how I normally develop framework. So this is the way, one of the way that you can do.
I think another way that you can do is just by reading, yeah. by reading, look at the existing framework from journals, right? And do your readings, and then you can be able to find what has not been done, you know, or why it's not significant. You need to study on that part. So from there, then you will be able to not come up with your own framework yet, but you already have the idea. But then you can decide on your framework.
Yes, you need to look into the existing literature, their framework, the theories that they use, because like what I tell you before, for framework also, because we are driven by based on fundamental theory. The fundamental theory will explain the whole things, right? So actually the theory that you use will give you a guideline on what are the variables that you must have in your framework. If let's say, for example, you are talking about intention to buy online, for example, e-commerce, most of the time we use all those internet technology related theory, for example, TAM, for example, UTAUT 2. Yeah, those are the theories. And these theories, some of the theories, they have very specific variables. You know, like technology theories, they have specific variables, like theory of planned behavior, they already have the variable defined for you. You must need to have those variables. Kalau you don't have those things, people will question why you don't have those things then, you know, those are the issues lah. So, but not all theories have specific variables identified for you. That is the things. Not all. Many theories doesn't have it actually. So, you know, let's say for example, social cognitive theory or whatever, they don't have variables identified for you. So those type of theory, then it allow more flexibility for you to add in the new variables into to borrow new variables into applying into your theories that they are testing. Yeah. So that's how
Grace. That's how I started too. I think I start with reading the framework first. Saya tengok framework dulu, tengok framework. I look at framework.
It's very rare for us to find meta-analysis paper, you know. Not many topics have people did meta-analysis. If some people do conceptual paper, they do the review of the literature already for you. That would be very good. Then you can get all the important papers related to it, right?
You just check.
But very rare.
Very rare.
Very rare. And I think most of the business related topics we are all studying a lot of psychology theories. You know, this I keep on telling my marketing students, we don't have theories in marketing. We all borrow theories from
the psychologists.
This is not a sham, but this is the reality of life. We are studying about consumer. Consumer are human. This is why we borrow a lot of theories from psychology. That's why you need to read psychology. I think many main weaknesses throughout the years I read by our students' papers or thesis in UMS is that our students didn't read enough psychology journals. We don't read, because those psychology journals are very difficult to understand. You know, let's say, for example, personality, applied psychology and personality, those type of theories are high-ranking theories, not even, now those psychologies are all published in marketing journals. They can't even get into their psychology journals anymore because it's too difficult to get in. And this is why you need to read, because those journals are very, very good journals. And this is my advice. When I was a student before, I read a lot of psychology journal. It's just like attitude. You know, a lot of students did PhD with attitude in their framework. But do you really know attitude? You know, those are the things. Do you really understand attitude theory? So if you are studying for your PhD, I believe you need to really understand very, very well how attitude change happen, why attitude is consistent and persistent, a resistance to change. Those are the things that we need to, if you are really doing study on those variables, each of the variables you need to study very, very detailed. And those are my advice. They all get stressed.
Hello, good morning. Can I ask the questions, Doctor? Sue here.
Hi,
Sue. Yes.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Grace and Dr. Izanti. I just want to ask one question is, normally when we doing the quantitative study, of course the theory driven is there, but for my case, entrepreneurship, what is asking your advice, maybe both of you. What is your advice when we are using integrated model? normally we just using one theory to underpin our research model, but when you go through your literature, you might see one theory is not enough to answer your research interest.
fine,
So
it's fine.
you might using integrated model. What is your advice, doctor? Thank you very much.
You actually, for your PhD study, you could have a main theory plus some of the supporting theories. It depends on how comprehensive is your framework. No problem. So for you to have a main one supported by the other one, some people are combining model with theories as well. For example, SOR is a model, it's not a theory. For example, we use so sometimes we might not have a theory to explain the whole framework. So some people use a model plus theories, several theories to support it. That happen as well. That is okay to me. It is okay.
Yes, yeah. I think as you read more in PhD level, yeah, I do believe that you might be using integrated model. So you can have more than 2 theories, but you have to be it has to be supported lah. Why you use that? I think that should be fine for me too.
And other things, but we need to be very careful A lot of people arguing. My previous supervisor actually not very much into this type of concept. Also, when the 2 theories are main theories, the reason being is you could have one big one, the other one two supporting one whatsoever. But combining theories, the theories has to be
tested.
Have a very good reason to be combined.
Betul. Yes, betul.
Itu yang kita kena justify. We need to justify lah. If you are having, you need to justify why these 2 theories appear or 3 theories appear in your framework. You need to justify that to convince your examiner. And most important thing is the logic of it. But actually, it's not to convince your examiner lah. It's the logic of having these theories in your framework.
Takut ada yang certain things that you did not include in your framework, whereby it's important in the theory kan, so it has to be supported lah.
Because sometimes students love to omit certain dimension, especially for those theory which have a very specific variables one. They are simply omitting parts of the dimension, the variables. Then you cannot claim I'm using this theory, because the theory is not complete. Unless you have a very good justification. This is my advice lah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much, doctor. Thank you very much. Yes, that's it.
Any
Good
more
morning,
questions?
Dr. Grace.
Morning.
Good morning. I have a question.
Okay.
For a PhD dissertation, how many words do we need to write?
Dr. Izanti, do we have a guideline on the words?
We have 60,000 for the dissertation, 60,000 words minimum.
60,000.
Yeah,
minimum.
60.
Okay.
Minimum, is it?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, class?
Dr. Izanti,
Yes.
Wendy here. I like to ask Dr. Grace because it's very interesting. Dr. Grace from Japan, the cultural way of addressing our supervisors. I think just now when I hear you say when we ask our supervisors any questions, we have to think first what to ask and do our homework. I like to learn more from that because I think we can benefit from that area in Japan on how to carry ourselves as a student.
Japanese doesn't talk very fast. My sensei used to criticize me for speaking too fast. I try to slow down when I was in Japan, but when I come back to Malaysia, I become the old Malaysian again. So we speak very fast. But sensei always says that, for Japanese, it's very important for us to think before we talk. So I think when you ask your supervisor questions, it will be very important for us to think first, organize your your idea first, and then support with facts, because of course not everything that your supervisor say is correct, and your supervisor is open for, normally lah, is open for
Criticism.
not to say criticism, but I would say you know, you disagreements in a sense, you know,
Disagreement, yes.
yeah, disagreement. She might have an idea, but you have another idea. As long as you can convince your supervisor, that is good enough. But of course, you have to look into your supervisor's personality and your own personality as well, because chemistry is very important. If yeah, that one is very subjective in a sense that different people has different style. Like me and my student, I always tell them, because I'm very straightforward. So if when I commenced, it is mainly based on the topic that we are discussing and not individual issues, you know. So I normally make things clear in the first place with my students, so that they will understand that we are discussing on the topics that we are discussing. That's all.
Great. How old was your supervisor that time? I think was 70s kan? 70
My
lebih.
supervisor, yeah, my supervisor is a very old gentleman. When I first met him, he was 66 perhaps, 66, yeah, close to 67. And then he retired at the age of 70. I finished my PhD. So I'm his last student, a very old gentleman. So when you talk to this type of a supervisor, you cannot be too pushy, you see, because he will be, yeah. So it depends on your supervisor lah, Wendy.
Yeah,
correct.
I think I'm learning from there, because culture is so important. Or even not just being a student, next time we come up to work or relationship, first we have to study. When we go to talk to anybody, we study the character first, and to see, like riding a boat, right? We study first whether the sea, where is it facing. Yeah, I think it's very good to so that two people can get along, relationship, whether supervisor and the students, or at work, a boss, or personal relationship.
Because when you come to master or PhD, most of the time I treat my student equally. You know, they are my friends rather than my student in a sense. So they can counter argue with me. No, there's no problem, but must be with fact in a sense. You know, they must have. This is what I'm saying. Student needs to be prepared for it. If not, then if you can't argue with facts, then of course you lose your ground in a sense.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, very true. Yeah. It's good to learn from you, Dr. Grace, about the culture in Japan, because not we hardly have the chance to actually work under a Japanese university culture.
Japanese, the harder part for Japanese would be, my own experience is it's very difficult for you to it's very difficult for you to impress them in terms of hardworking, because they are very hardworking. They are more hardworking than us. So it is, you know, here I always tell my students, you must be hardworking, you read more. But in Japan, you know, read more is compulsory. So it's your job. So it's not it's nothing impressive to them if you read more actually. So you need to impress them in other things. So it is harder to get a Japanese supervisor, because hardworking doesn't impress them. And you know, hardworking actually is the easiest one to me, rather than you know.
I remember Dr. Grace, when Dr. Grace was in Japan, we visited her for, I think, about 1 week. She still have time to go to the university, even though me and my friend wanted to go for holiday with her. You wait, we wait. She even mentioned to me that you guys wait for me after my lecture, after I met my supervisor, then we can enjoy lah, like that. You know, that level of hardworking. I think if we were at that time, it was like, sorry, supervisor, my friend from Malaysia come, we want to have fun, you know.
Cannot go for holiday, cannot tell supervisor.
Yeah, I think they're still very traditional. In the real world, sometimes the reason I ask is, in the real world, what are the advantages and disadvantages of our traditional
Not to say they are traditional, it's just that they do not need to know actually, because they are not our friend. we do not, you don't treat your supervisor as a friend, even though they might say that they treat you as a friend, but don't treat your supervisor as a friend, because your supervisor, in some country, supervisor determine a lot whether you can pass or not. In Malaysia, it's not that. In Malaysia, your supervisor is helping you and your examiners are the one who say you can pass or not, kan? But in overseas, sometimes your supervisor play a very, very important role to determine whether you can pass or not. So your supervisor needs to at least be impressed with you in a sense whether you are very smart or you are very committed, you are very hardworking. So those are the things that. So that's why when I was there, normally we don't tell our supervisor whether we go for holiday, whether I have a personal problem. we are not like that. We don't. But in Malaysia, it's no. That's why culture is very different. Culture is very different. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
That's why.
Hello, Dr. Grace.
Hi.
Hi, I have a question because we are just talking about the culture difference. So if I want to use the scale, the theories based on the Western cultures, and I want to use in the Asian culture. So when I use the scale, what should I consider? Or to
You mean
use
scale,
the
is it?
scale?
The measurement scale, is it?
Yeah, measurement scales. If I borrow the measurement scales from the Western cultures and I want to use in the Asian cultures, so what should I consider?
Can I apa tu line tu kenapa ada noise?
I mean, considering about the culture difference, when I use the Western cultures, when I borrow the scales from Western cultures.
Sorry, can I ask you one thing? The scale that you meant here is actually any scale, is it?
Pardon?
The scale for any variable, is it? It's not for culture related study, right?
The scale, yeah. The scale is studied mainly in Western cultures.
I do understand. Maybe can you mute yourself for a while? Because I can hear there are some echo.
For example, if I considering about the well-being in Western cultures, that's different. That's different view of well-being in Asian, right?
Okay. First of all, do you have a Asian version of well-being scale? Don't have, is it?
No.
Then I do not know the scale. How does it look like? But if you want to do a PhD, you can borrow the right now the one that we are doing, even for cultural study. We are also using the Western scale.
Yes.
Yeah, but there are a lot of researchers are actually not from the Western market. They are not testing on the Western market as well. And if this particular scale was proven acceptable in, for example, in the Asian context, then I believe you may use it. Unless the scale really very much context related in a sense. Because many scales are quite general. It doesn't specific to a particular geographical setting. Okay. It should be okay.
Okay. So maybe I need to use the exploratory and confirmatory test to test the scale.
Yeah, then you will need to run this factor analysis. You will need to. Then you might need to have a pilot test. If it is related to culture. Yeah.
And before the pilot test, do I need to do some like focus group or interview to get the opinions from people?
I think
you know what, actually the right one to do it, right? Can you mute yourself? Yeah, can you mute her? Because I think you heard noise.
mute her.
No, because I heard noises. I heard echo.
Okay.
You guys heard no echoes or not? Hello?
Yeah, I heard noises.
Yeah, now it's okay. Because sorry. I do not know who asked questions just now, because when you switch on your mic, I heard echoes. I heard myself talking and my voice got echoes. That's why keep on repeating the questions. The thing is like it, I believe questions. That's why there are something that I need to clarify. Are you doing a research on related to culture? If this is a culture related studies, then your scale, you might have issues, or whether it's a Western scale or Eastern scale in a sense. But if you're not talking about culture, but any other scale that is developed in the Western country, whether you can use it in the Eastern country or not. This reflects to the issue of body of the knowledge. If it is the body of the knowledge, you're talking about attitude. Attitude, whether it's good or bad, it is positive or negative. You're measuring it is negative or positive, good or bad, favorable, unfavorable. These are all common scale, I don't think it is culture related. I don't think it is limit to a particular geographical context. You can test it in the US for good or bad, at a positive or negative. Same thing, you can test it in the Asia context as well. You get me, right? So it doesn't matter in a sense. To some scale, unless it is very much specific to the culture, you're talking about perhaps
Chip.
apa tu yang Hofstede punya
Hofstede.
theory tu, then maybe those are the things that you need to re-look into the measurement items, whether it is suitable to be applied in the Asian context or not. To me, if it is not a general, any other dimensions, any other variables in any other context, I do not think that would be an issue. This is why I'm saying generalizability of the study all depends on how good is the framework that you're testing, the variables that you're testing, the measurement items that you're adopting. It has to be the one that is good enough. In the end of the day, it will help you easier for you to generalize it. Okay. I'm not sure whether I answered that question or not.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Grace. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I think, is there any question? I think you can, if you have any question, you can always, if you want to ask question, you can always message, email Dr. Grace at this email, kan Dr. Grace? Sekejap saya bagi.
Yeah, you can email me. I try to help you, but of course, the most important thing is you.
Of course, you still need to meet your supervisor, yeah?
Yeah. The most important thing is you and your supervisor, because whatever I say will not be as good as your supervisor. Definitely, it will not be as good as your supervisor. Your supervisor has the final say. What I'm giving you right just now is just advices based on my own experience. It might not be applicable to all the students. It might not be.
It's the limitation of your talk lah kan, Grace? Like the limitation of the paper, limitation of your talk. Cannot be
Yes, I cannot you cannot generalize it to any other conditions. Yeah, so please talk to your supervisor, and every supervisor has their own style of approaching your research proposal, to be frank.
Tak ada yang tak good, right?
Yeah, there's no good or bad. It's just the whether of issue of suitable or not suitable.
Exactly. So I think that's all for today, Dr. Grace.
Thank you so much.
Maybe we can take photo first. Puan Ellie, adakah Puan Ellie?
Ya, boleh doktor.
Boleh, ya. Pukul 11
Ini penting sudah dengar saya bercakap kan.
Tak pandai berhenti, Madam Dr. Grace.
No, because this course is normally is a whole day workshop, like previously.
It's good. I myself learn a lot. I always say like that. Hello, now I can see Ahsan Umar. How are you, Ahsan? Mr. Ahsan, how are you? I see familiar faces. This is
Thank you.
Humphrey. Oh, Humphrey. Hi,
I'm so
Humphrey.
sorry, I couldn't switch on my camera.
It's okay. We just take whoever lah kan, Dr. Grace.
Yeah. It's just like now you see, now you don't. So I'm so sorry.
Yeah. This is Zaris ni kan? Ya, betul. Sawana. Okay, Mary. Okay.
1, 2, shoot, smile. Again, smile.
And to shoot. Okay,
Thank you.
smile. 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Grace, for being here. I hope next time you will do a qualitative punya pula proposal for the qualitative part.
Yeah, that would be very good.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
So take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you, Dr. Grace.
Thank you, doctors. Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, doctor.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.